Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Kathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
When stiff person syndrome tried to hijack her life, Dr. Tara Zier decided to establish the Stiff Person Syndrome Research Foundation to raise money for development of treatments and a cure.
Stiff person syndrome is a rare autoimmune disorder that most commonly causes muscle stiffness and painful spasms that come and go and can worsen over time. The muscle contractions usually begin in the legs and the back and can cause difficulty walking, unsteadiness, and falling, shortness of breath if muscles in the chest are affected, chronic pain, and an exaggerated curve in the lower back. SPF, which is short for stiff person syndrome, affects more women than men and usually occurs in individuals in their 40s and 50s. There is no known cure for SPS, but medications and therapies can improve quality of life. Tara has established relationships with the Stiff Person Syndrome Center at Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic and around the world. Dr. Tara Zier co-founded Smiles Dentistry Practice in Fairfax, Virginia, and later joined an Alexandria practice. Dr. Zier, thank you so much for joining us today on It Happened to Me.
People may have heard of stiff person syndrome, especially since Celine Dion has shared that she is also affected by it. How would you, Dr. Zier, describe stiff person syndrome, and how does it affect individuals who live with it?
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. And so I'm happy to share with you. You touched a little bit about as far as what the disease is. I want to emphasize it is a spectrum disorder. It can be severely disabling for many. And the name doesn't do it justice. So people aren't just stiff. They can have muscle spasms so severe that they break bones, dislocate joints, and result in life-threatening breathing problems. As you mentioned, many patients have difficulty with mobility and require assisted devices like walkers and wheelchairs. Some people are even bedridden with this disease. Another feature, if you will, is a startle reflex that many experience. And that happens when light noise or light touch or noise affects somebody, and it elicits a full body spasm where people will freeze like a statue and face plant. They fall and they don't have the postural reflexes to catch themselves, and they can sustain very serious injuries. This can lead to a fear of open spaces, and people can be scared to leave their homes. It can lend itself to isolation and also depression.
Wow. Now, how did your journey with stiff person syndrome begin? And how long did it take you to receive a diagnosis?
Sure. So prior to stiff person syndrome or SPS, I was super active. I was a dentist. I did karate. I traveled with my kids. I never gave my health a second thought. In 2014, my former husband died by suicide, which I believe triggered
Sorry.
Thank you.
So sorry.
Which I believe triggered the disease. My kids were 11 and 13 at the time. I was under an enormous amount of stress. My neurologist actually said that emotional trauma activates the immune system. So this is not an uncommon thing to happen.
Oh.
3 months later, I developed pneumonia and my health spiraled down after that. I started experiencing a myriad of symptoms and was running from doctor to doctor in crisis mode, knowing something was seriously wrong and trying to find answers. I was mismanaged and misdiagnosed, told it was all in my head. In 2017, I was unable to work, drive, care for myself or my kids, and had to hire someone to live with us. I finally connected with the right doctors and was diagnosed in the fall of 2017 with SPS after 3 years, 9 ER visits, and 13 specialists.
Wow.
Oh,
And
my
how did you
goodness.
find the right doctor for the diagnosis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I recommend to people is have a superstar primary care doctor. That's your quarterback for your healthcare. So I was going, from specialist to specialist, not, my symptoms weren't really obvious as to what was going on. And, the ER just kept getting dismissed and sent home. And I had one primary care doctor I saw, he said to me, Tara, I don't know why you keep running from doctor to doctor. You're anxious. Take this medication for anxiety and see me back in 3 months. And he got in my face and said that. And I'm a professional. So, but I looked at him, I'm not going to take it, and I said, listen, if you felt the way I feel, you'd do the same thing. And I walked out. And so
Good for you.
yeah, so I went on a quest to find a primary care doctor after that who could help me. And so I found one who was referred by 2 different healthcare providers. One was an anesthesiologist and one was a physical therapist. They both referred me to the same woman. And she's just fantastic. She cares about people. She's brilliant. And I saw her, and she was the one who said, you know what? Something looks like it might be neurological. She immediately got me in with a local neurologist who diagnosed me. And he'd only seen, I think, one or maybe just one patient. And that's when I immediately looked up, okay, what is this disease? Who treats it? Ended up going to Hopkins, was airlifted to Mayo, couldn't walk at that point, had to do first level living at my home. So that was kind of, how I got to getting the diagnosis. And it took me 3 years. It takes on average 7 years to diagnose, which is staggering. Wow. And when I tell you 3 years, that was every single week. I was running from doctor to doctor. This was not, I just didn't do anything for 6 months. This was nonstop for 3 years.
Wow.
Tara, are there autoimmune issues in your family?
Yes. So my mother has some autoimmune conditions that she deals with. And then I had 2 prior autoimmune diseases that both resolved. I went into remission with those 2. And one, ironically, one was rare and associated with pregnancy. So, and I actually told the primary care doctor, I'm like, listen, I've gone rare before and I've gone autoimmune, look for it. And listen, people are anxious. I'm not dismissing that diagnosis, but, doctors need to do their due diligence and really listen to patients and make sure they rule out other, medical conditions and not just say, oh, this person's anxious and call it a day.
Right.
Tara, we have talked to so many people on the podcast that have different autoimmune diseases. And the symptoms of these autoimmune diseases are disparate and they seem to be somewhat random. And so it does seem to take a while to get the diagnosis, but they are real. And I'm so glad that you were able to find a doctor that took you seriously and then was able to focus and help you get that diagnosis. But these autoimmune diseases, we just don't understand why they creep up and why all of a sudden they occur. But certainly the stress you were under, and I'm so very sorry with the loss of your husband in such a violent way, had to have been an enormous toll on you. Mm-hmm. So I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Someone should have heard that, and I'm sorry that didn't happen. I wanted to ask you about treatment, now
Sure.
that you know that you have SPS, which is the abbreviated term, treatments that you're using to help with the symptoms, because we know there's no cure, but there is a way to help you lead a more functional life, and what you have found to be helpful.
Yeah, so I look at treatment, I look at it like from a multidisciplinary approach. So I look at like the psychological components, the physical components. I look at conventional medicine, unconventional medicine, all of those things. It took a lot of stress, emotionally, physically, doing dentistry for 20 years. I can't say that I was the kindest to my body. So it took some time for my body to say, hey, you know what? We're shutting down. So to heal, I think you have to address all of those things. And so like for the psychological aspects, I do trauma therapy, something called EFT or tapping. I do that weekly. I also focus on nutrition. There are a lot of things out there, nothing specific for stiff person syndrome, but there are different things I've read about nutrition, and I try different things. I've been all raw for, I give something like 6 months to a year, and see how it impacts my symptoms. So I kind of look at things, I collect data, and then reassess. Physical therapy, that's something I do 3 times a week. And now in the beginning, I couldn't tolerate any physical therapy. It would elicit such a high pain response that my blood pressure would spike up. Now I can tolerate it, and I can tolerate quite a bit of it. And it exhausts me. It hurts. It's painful. Like it kind of goes against the whole listen to your body, thing that people say. It goes against that, but I kind of ride the line on, I check my blood pressure. If I'm not breaking things, tearing things, if it's not landing at me in the hospital, I'm getting stronger. And so I'll take that trade-off. I'll take the strength. I think it's helping with my mobility. So
use it or lose it, as they
use
say.
it or lose
Yeah.
it. I'd like to keep it if I can. Massage, stretching, and then more like unconventional therapies like acupuncture. I just started that maybe a month ago. So that's going to take some time to really determine, if it's helping. And it's hard to tease things out too. It's not like you're stopping everything else and then you're like, okay, I'm just going to try this one thing. With respect to medications, I was on multiple medications when I was initially diagnosed, including medications in the benzodiazepine class, like Klonopin, Valium. I was also taking a muscle relaxer called baclofen. Those are very common medications used for stiff person syndrome. I tried an immunotherapy called IVIG, which is common. Now I am only taking Valium, and I keep my dose low. The trade-off is the pain. So the problem with benzodiazepines is the medication, you end up having a problem with tolerance. So at whatever dose you're taking, over time, it's not effective anymore. And so where does that end? You just keep increasing it.
Yes.
And one of the side effects of benzodiazepines is the cognitive impairment.
Yes.
So to me, it's like, well, I'll just take the pain and be able to, help myself think well. And I'm not saying that this works for all patients, or this is appropriate by any stretch. That's been my experience. And there is a subset of the population of this particular patients with SPS who will progress, where the disease is progressing. And so they have to continue to explore other treatments. Not everybody, from what I understand, experiences progression, but there are a lot of patients who do. So
have you tried water aerobics?
I've done aqua therapy, which is maybe similar.
Similar,
yeah. I used to swim when I was younger, and I when I was doing it, it was difficult psychologically. I was in the pool with a lot of people who were much older than I was, and I mean, not that that's a problem. I just felt I felt sick, you know, because I used to be this competitive swimmer, and then I'm being like
Oh,
floated around in the water. And I just, you know, I said, you know what? I would rather try to swim, even though it would hurt, and then psychologically feel like I'm doing these things because I'm sick. I've had to reframe a lot of things. Like I stopped calling physical therapy physical therapy. I call it training now, because I
Okay.
think that when you label things, it can have a psychological impact. Like if you start listing, oh, here are all my diagnoses, you know, it can mess with your head. So I've
mhm.
done some experimentation with just the language I use. You know, people say this disease isn't curable. They say it's incurable. We don't know that it's incurable. You know, there hasn't been enough research to say it's incurable. It just hasn't been cured yet. So
Right.
I think language is important.
I think
Well,
it's
I
very
think that
important.
sounds like a very good idea and a good coping mechanism for how you're dealing with this disability. I wondered if I could ask you, there are medications that you use. Are there medications that you now avoid?
So there aren't any that apply to me, that I, you know, a doctor said you can't take this anymore. So I don't
Mhm.
have anything specifically for me personally. There is a class of medications called SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, which they have been reported to exacerbate muscle spasms
Huh.
in people with stiff person syndrome.
Oh, so
Well,
you want to definitely avoid that.
yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about food. So
Mhm.
you focus on food, and what have you found? Because there is food and inflammation and autoimmune disease. There's so much research on
Oh,
this.
sure, sure. Gosh, I've taken courses, I've read books. You know, like I said, I was all raw for a period of time. I can't tease out like, you know, how diets impacted my symptoms, but I will say I kind of read and sort of extract information and do um you know, the kind of the known things. Okay, I minimize any processed foods. You know,
Uh-huh.
I am gluten free. You know, there's some literature out there to support that. You know,
Yeah.
some of it's controversial. You know, some people will say, oh, you know, definitely don't do gluten, and then other people say gluten doesn't matter. So, you know, you're going to get different opinions on things, especially nutrition. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it and just stick with whole foods. I do mostly a vegetarian diet, and that's just been my approach to it. But it's hard to really fully assess the impact. So I mean, it's difficult.
Mhm.
You know, so we're talking about how you're dealing with this debilitating diagnosis, and you talked about how you flipped everything to the positive, even naming what you do. Your PT is now training. So you made it, instead of something for a sick person, it's now a positive. And I wonder if your advocacy is also helping you. So tell us a little bit about how you established the Stiff Person Syndrome Research Foundation. And I wonder, not only were you helping others, but helping yourself as well.
Ah, that's great. Yeah. So my primary care doctor, the woman I have now, who I said is gold, she told me that the foundation is actually part of my treatment. So you know, and I believe, I really truly believe that to be true. That kind of
Yes,
goes into purpose, you know, having a
yes,
purpose in life.
Yes.
yeah.
And I think that's key. That's key to living. That's why you get up every day, you know.
Hmm.
So, you know, as far as like how I came to establish the foundation, I ultimately landed at Johns Hopkins for my treatment. It was probably around my third visit at Hopkins when my neurologist said to me they had recently applied for a grant for research at NIH, and they were denied the grant because there wasn't enough research to support getting the grant. And like,
Hmm.
and that just completely blew my mind. You know, I was in debilitating pain, a single mother, no good treatments, no cure. And so like I knew at that moment it's go time. So shortly thereafter we were on the news raising awareness, and then I knew we needed to raise money for research. So that's when I looked at the nonprofit route and started the Stiff Person Syndrome Research Foundation. in the latter part of 2019, really with two main drivers. One, to raise money for research, and two, to show my children that no matter what hand you're dealt in life, you can still make a difference for people.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great lesson.
So you really launched this during the pandemic.
Yeah, I guess I did.
That's exciting. And you made such a difference. It's very exciting. What a good lesson for your kids. I'm just going back to that. And I think it's wonderful that you set such a standard for life and living. And
thank you.
Now, can you tell us about the mission and the goals of the foundation and the impact you aim to achieve?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do so. So, I mean, to put it simply, our mission is to cure the disease. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And our biggest initiative on the research side is building a global patient registry natural history study. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest barriers to research is having enough data for researchers to study. So that is extremely impactful when you're talking about rare diseases and small numbers. The registry we're building will give the researchers a large pool of patients, the data they need to study to expedite research and clinical trial development.
Gotcha. Now, how has your foundation helped individuals living with SPS challenges?
So, yeah. Oh, gosh.
It's a loaded question. I know.
No. It's so huge. Like when you talk about the mission, one of the arms of the mission that we added a little bit later on. So it's like, okay, raise awareness, raise money for research. And then we were already doing this, but the third arm of the mission is to strengthen the community through education and collaboration. Mm-hmm. So we thought it was that question you're asking. It's important and critical to do that. So we said, you know what, we need to put that in our mission statement. So as far as ways to do that, so on our website, we provide education and resources, tools for patients, for advocacy. On our website, there's a place where patients can share their stories, which I get so much feedback, like how therapeutic that is for people to share their story. They really crave it and love that we put that out there so they can be heard. I think that's really key. But I think the biggest way we're helping the community, honestly, is that we're giving them hope. We're collaborating with experts all over the world on getting better treatments. No one has done this before for stiff person syndrome. We get messages all the time saying, thank you for doing the work you're doing.
Wow.
So I think that hope piece, I think people in general, they need hope. And I don't mean like a blind hope. I mean an actionable hope, like hope meaning action. Yeah.
Now, how has your personal professional experience in the dental field influenced your approach to addressing stiff person syndrome, both for you and for your foundation? Do you think, I see life as a building block, and do you think that really helped you?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So, having a background in healthcare, I mean, that gave me an advantage, definitely, like navigating through the diagnostic odyssey, being able to understand and have a baseline knowledge of science. And I think that gave me a big advantage with being my own advocate. And knowing when to stand up and say, listen, I'm getting a second opinion, knowing when to push, knowing how to navigate the system that way.
And knowing how to handle the doctor that's in your face telling you need anxiety medicine.
Yeah, and still being able and handling it in a way I feel good about. I feel good about the way I handled it, and that's important, at least to me. And that goes into giving tips to people who are going through a similar process is like, if you don't have that background, if you don't have that skill set, and you're having difficulty, like, if you can find a friend or have a family member who has a background in healthcare, who can help, be your advocate, who can go to those appointments with you and take notes and help to understand information that way, I think it's huge. So, my experience and background in dentistry really helped support that. I also think that, leading a team and multiple dental practices, those skills transferred over to leading a nonprofit. So that's been, and there's been a big learning curve. I never imagined I would be running a nonprofit. But I did have skill sets that have been, I've been able to transfer over, which has been great.
So Tara, I have to ask you how you were able to join Hopkins and Mayo together in the stiff person syndrome journey.
Sure.
How did that happen? You've got two major, giant organizations.
Yep.
To make that happen.
So, I don't know if you all are familiar with NORD, the National Organization for Rare Disorders. Okay.
Yes.
One of the leading organization, in the rare disease space. So we're actually platinum members of NORD. And one of their criteria was forming a medical advisory board, which is what we were planning to do anyway. And so that helped to facilitate the collaboration you're referring to.
I see.
So our medical advisory board, we currently have SPS experts, not only from Hopkins and Mayo, but also the Jefferson Institute, Colorado, and Hartford Healthcare. And I have to say, it's incredible to witness the collaboration with these experts, getting their advice, their insights. Like the patient registry. I can tell you when I'm on these calls, on Zoom calls, just like we are right now, and I see these little windows of people from Mayo, Hopkins, and all over the, like in their own little silos, but all together talking and working toward a common goal. Like almost like, in a sense, sometimes they're viewed as competitors because that they're at different academic institutions, but they are collaborating. Everyone's working together for the best interest of the patient. And I get the chills when I'm on those calls.
I think it's miraculous what you've done to bring all these experts together, because I think their natural tendency might be, as you say, to compete, but that's really not advancing the ball at all. And so somehow you've formed this collaboration and this spirit of moving together, because only together can we find a cure. So thinking about that, I wanted to ask you about current research, and where are we on the current research?
So with respect to research, I know there's some efforts that are happening to look for biomarkers to better understand the pathophysiology or cause of the disease. I can tell you that our registry efforts that we're currently undertaking are supported by the Medical Advisory Board. And I believe that really will help accelerate research. So that goes back into the data, getting enough data, and having a patient-facing organization like ours. We're able to have a farther reach, so we can tap into the global SPS world with this registry, and so everyone is supportive of those efforts to get us to more targeted treatments, to expedite research.
It's wonderful.
Wow.
Absolutely wonderful.
Now, back to raising awareness. I'm wondering, how important do you think raising awareness about rare diseases generally and stiff person syndrome specifically, how important do you think that is? And what steps has your foundation taken to increase public understanding?
Oh, gosh. I mean, you have to have the awareness. This disease is taking seven years to diagnose. People don't know about it. So that's one of the arms of our mission, to raise awareness. So we engage the community. We engage the public with our newsletters and the website, with all different social media platforms. We've been in the Washington Post, in the medical mysteries column, on the front page. We've been on the news. Thank you, Celine Dion, for publicly announcing. I'm absolutely heartbroken for her for this diagnosis, and so grateful at the same time that she came forward. She pushed the awareness, pushed us 50 years in a day when she made that announcement.
Right.
Yeah.
What type of awareness is there in the medical community now versus when you were first on your diagnostic journey as to the possibility of testing or thinking about stiff person syndrome? It sounds like it was much rarer in the vocabulary.
Yeah, I think so. I really, people just hadn't heard of it.
Right.
When I, going through, the ER 9 times and going through 13 specialists, it just wasn't on people's radars. And so I think that the media exposure that we've had has really not only raised awareness for the general public, but also has raised awareness in the medical community. One of our medical advisory board members said that he has had, since Celine Dion made her announcement, a huge influx of patients showing up at his office thinking they have the disorder.
Oh.
So yeah, so you've now people are actually understanding, okay, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z symptoms. This might be this particular disease.
Yeah.
We don't even know how rare it is because it just hasn't been on people's radars. So the numbers are likely much higher than right now. It's reported 1 to 2 per million, but the numbers are likely much higher because of the rate of misdiagnosis and the length of time to diagnosis.
What else could it be diagnosed as? What other possibilities?
So it's often misdiagnosed as multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, psychological disorders.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And what role, speaking of patient communities, what role do they play in advancing research and support for stiff person syndrome? And how have you fostered connections with the patients?
Sure. Yeah. Patient communities play a huge role. They help to raise awareness. They actually they participated in a lot of the interviews after Celine Dion made her announcement. So all through the U.S., in their local news networks, they were being interviewed. So we were kind of funneling things to our patient community too. I did 11 interviews in a day. From 8:30 a.m. to 9:45 p.m.
Oh my goodness.
I was on interviews. And so we were constantly funneling them to different people. And we were so excited that people had an opportunity to talk about it. That people were, they wanted to know about it. And so that's one role they play with raising awareness. People also they host fundraisers. They help with funding. They engage their networks. They understand that funding rare disease is difficult. It's extremely difficult to get funding. One of the things that we did is we formed a patient advisory committee, and that's the purpose of that is to make sure that the patient voice is represented in all of our initiatives. So, for example, our registry initiative, our protocol, our surveys. We want to understand, when we ask questions, when we're going to be launching our registry, how burdensome is that on our patients to fill out questionnaires? That's an example of how we would engage our patients and how we kind of mutually support. They support us as a foundation. We support the patients because ultimately that's what our end goal is.
Right. Now, speaking of supporting the patients, do you have any tools like social media groups or anything like that that can really help the foundation reach out and support families and patients of stiff person syndrome?
So we we don't have what you call a traditional support group. We do our foundation. We are on all social media platforms, so we will have people engage on the platform, and based on what's posted and things like that. We do host Facebook Lives and give forums like that for patient engagement. And we also, we're actually co-hosting the annual SPS conference in 2024 in the beginning of May. And that is, several of our medical advisory board members will be there. Patients will be in person. They'll also be able to attend virtually. So we're giving them a place to connect. You will never see more stiff persons in a room at one time. So like we doubled last year. So last year it was, this year we had like 50 in person. The year before was 25. And one of our medical advisory board members, he's been hosting the whole time. And he's like, I'd love for you guys to co-host. So we're working together with the conference, which is great.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, this is really impressive what you have done in creating this foundation. It's starting from scratch, what you through sheer will and through your medical knowledge, but perseverance, it sounds like. And I wonder, what advice can you give to our listeners who would like to establish a foundation?
Oh gosh. Yeah, go for it. Just do it. Like just do it. Yeah. I mean, that's the simplest advice. And it goes back to what I said, like, so patient facing organizations, for rare diseases are capable of having, more reach than single academic centers. So one thing that we were just
that's an interesting statement.
Yeah, very.
That's a very interesting statement.
Yeah. So we were fortunate to receive what's called the Chan Zuckerberg Rare as One grant in 2021. So we are one of 49 rare disease organization grant recipients, and they have provided 3 years of support, funding, trainings, and networking. So we've had the benefit of networking with 49 other rare disease patient organizations. So we've been able to see firsthand the impact that a patient-led, patient-facing organization can have.
That's really wonderful. So give us some hope. Tell us a great story that someone with stiff person syndrome has related to you, or let's hear a happy story.
Oh gosh, a happy story. Yeah, there's just so many. Like when you're going through this process, and especially in the beginning, and you have no idea what to expect, and you don't really know kind of who to turn to, and I did meet someone in a support group, and like, I kind of look for like, okay, well, who's positive and who's like, and because you can, get all different personality types. So you kind of look for whatever is going to be you're best suited for yourself, and I met someone through the group that really held my hand, through a lot of difficult times. And I'm very grateful for him for doing that. Like, I would be panicked where I'm like, I don't know, do I need to go back to the ER? And just scared, and I was alone, and I've got these 2 kids, and it's like to have somebody to talk to who gets it, who's like, it's okay. I'll stay on with you. I'll stay on, And so, and I've had a couple other people that I've connected with who, we kind of can talk about it, because I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand, especially, a chronic condition that you wake up to every day, especially when it's invisible. That adds a whole nother level of confusion. Like I'll have people say, oh, you look great, I'm glad you're better. And I'm like, those two aren't correlated. But like, I don't want to be confrontational with people, so you just kind of smile. But to talk to someone and have somebody who gets it, I think it's really key.
Wow. Well, looking to the future, what are your hopes and aspirations for your research foundation? And then what are the hopes for cures and treatment and any kind of research that's going on for stiff person syndrome?
Yeah. So my hope is easy. It's going for the cure. How do we get there? The registry, that's our focus right now. That's going to help expedite, getting us to clinical trials, to better treatments. I can tell you, like, in my dream world, when you talk about like, what's your holy grail, it would be that not only do we get better treatments and a cure for stiff person syndrome, but that the research that we're doing can unlock like discoveries and better treatments for other diseases, because that happens. And that would be like the big dream.
That's wonderful. Absolutely. Dr. Zier, you are so busy with patient advocacy. What do you do for yourself? I mean, you're such a go girl go type of, I want to be your cheerleader. But what do you do to maintain your mental health? What do you do to keep your strength and determination and positive attitude going?
I just laugh. So, okay. I'm kind of a visual person, so I'm just gonna kind of have you envision something. So I put my health like at the very top of a triangle, like in the middle, like a dot in the middle. And when I look at engaging with people, situations, I look at it and say, does that fit in that triangle? And if it doesn't, I don't do it. And I'm so comfortable with that I've actually said to someone, I'm sorry, that's just not healthy for me to participate. And I'm so calm about it. I think it shocks people. But I think having those boundaries is absolutely key, especially when you're dealing with fatigue and limited reserves. And, I need to be able to allow myself the ability to function in the way that I want to. And so I have to have those boundaries. We may have talked about this before, Kathy, but did we talk about the spoon theory? Did we talk about that?
I think not today, but yes.
Yeah.
I think
I kind of look at it like, so there's something out there called the spoon theory, and it was, it's used to help people explain like what people deal with a chronic condition. And there's one woman was sitting in a restaurant in a booth across from her friend. And she's like, okay, let me help you understand this. And so she gathered up a bunch of spoons, and she's like, in my day, I start with 10 spoons. I'm just picking a number. Okay. And getting out of bed, it takes 2 spoons, right? So then I'm down to 8. And then like eating, that takes another spoon. So I'm down to 7. And so, when you look at it that way and you quantify your energy, you have to prioritize things in such a way. Like, I plan when I'm going to take a shower. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's the level of planning. Because if I know I have X amount of spoons, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do for that day, and I plan. So, I planned for this tonight. I did shower.
You look terrific.
Well, thank you. But, I look at like my kids, and, my daughter's a college soccer player, and I want to make sure that I can be there for her. So I kind of like, that's how I navigate things. And I'm very, 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 very protective of my health, because if I can't protect my health, I can't be there for others. And I really want to.
And if you don't protect it, who will? I mean,
exactly.
You're number one. You got to be number one for you with your health.
Yeah.
Do you take naps? Can you take a nap to restore some energy?
Yeah. So the challenge with stiff person syndrome is sleep's typically an issue because the muscle spasms, they don't stop.
Would wake you up.
Yeah. So like I've had a couple sleep tests, and I get minimal deep sleep. And, a lot of like micro arousals. But I haven't done any tests lately because it doesn't matter. It's not going to change what I'm doing. So, but I will occasionally take a nap. And does it restore me? I wouldn't. say that it restores me, but sometimes it can give me just that little bit of whatever I need, a little bit of oomph,
Right.
to get me through the next, few hours.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dr. Zier, for sharing your journey, the foundation's work, and your personal insights into stiff person syndrome and rare disease advocacy. You've really helped to raise awareness of this syndrome and increase public understanding. Thank you so much for being here today, and it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yep. Thank you all. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keir Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.